Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu-alaikum. Ji ayanu, pakhair agale, ni hao, churushum washmale. Ohai Gonzaimas, guten Morgen, hola, bonjour, privyet, kaifa hal, haleshum achatore, ahlan wasal, marhaba. Buna, mucho gracias, suavi, abhalli kare aya. Hoş geldin and ayo sayo, khuyamora, chi vatto, chi haljot, kalimera, khairutan. And a very warm welcome to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and watching. Well, this morning, ladies and gentlemen, I happen to be Shahzad Khan, and with me, I'm really lucky to have been joined by my very well-known colleague who happens to be Miss Hajra. Satti. Hello, Hajra. Assalamu alaikum. How are you feeling today?
Walaikum assalam. Thank you so much for introducing me. So, the International Cricket Council has called a board meeting on the Friday regarding the ICC Champions Trophy 2025. And according to the ICC spokesperson, the meeting will be held online, in which the all board members will participate. The schedule of the Champions Trophy is likely to be finalized during the meeting. The ICC Champions Trophy will be held in Pakistan in February and March 2025. 8 teams will participate in the event. The Pakistan cricket team will defend their title in the mega event. And obviously, it's a good and a great milestone. And I think there's another interesting news, that too from the sporting arena.
Exactly. And, while we speak of Champions Trophy, ladies and gentlemen, certainly, everybody's eyeing on the schedule as well, which certainly will be out after the meeting. But here's the good news. Obviously, after, England-Pakistan Test Series, after the ODI series that we won in Australia against Australia, Pakistan has actually crushed Zimbabwe by 10 wickets in the second one-day international in Bulawayo and leveled the 3-match series 1-1. PTV Sports SD is telecasting the entire event live. Earlier, Zimbabwe won the toss and elected to bat. Batting first, Zimbabwe were bowled out for 145 runs in 32.3 overs. But not just that. For Pakistan, debuter Arbab Ahmed bagged 4, while Salman Agha took 3 wickets. Saim Ayub and Faisal Akram grabbed 1 wicket each, and Saim completing his century and remained top scorer with unbeaten 113 runs of 62 balls. Wow. Right. Saim Ayub, you did a great job, phenomenal. And that's how Pakistan team is, unpredictable.
Right. And now moving on to, since, whenever we start a conversation, it is a very South Asian thing, or particularly Pakistani thing, that we ask about the weather, and it's some more cue to start a develop a conversation. Yeah, at the Mausam kaisa hai, and how's the weather in the environment today. So, in order to further delve into the conversation surrounding the weather, we are very glad that we have been joined by the Chief Met Officer, Pakistan's Meteorological Department. He is Dr. Sardar Sarfaraz. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sardar, and thank you so much for joining us.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you.
Right. So, Dr. Sarfaraz, when are we expecting a snowfall in the mountainous areas? Because it is a tourist attraction point. A lot of people flock to mountains to witness the wonder of the nature, or the marvel of the nature.
सर, हमें मुख्तलिफ वक्तों पे उर्दू में हम ये खबर सुनते थे कि मुल्क के मुख्तलिफ अजला में बर्फबारी का सिलसिला शुरू हो गया. वो अभी तक क्यों नहीं हुआ?
Thank you very much. देखें, अभी तक जो so far we have not received any proper westerly wave which usually gave the rainfall and mountains over snow. On Friday and Saturday, 2 to 3 days, we are expecting some weather in Balochistan, scattered places in Balochistan also, and over KP also, and GB and Kashmir, and north of Punjab. We can say that. So these are the places which are going to receive light rain to moderate rain, light to moderate rain at scattered places, and also light snow. It will be not heavy snow, but light snow we can expect during this spell over the mountain areas of even Balochistan, over some places, some high mountains, and then over high mountains of the KP and Kashmir.
And Dr. Saab, how much are we expecting a drop, in the temperature as well? Because imagine that, there was a time in Islamabad that we used to experience 0 degree or 1 degree or -1 degree. Do you think in days to come, as you mentioned about rains and that the westerly wave will come in, do you think that there will be a significant drop in the temperature?
Yes, usually actually whenever the westerly wave passes on, so it is followed by the cold wind, cold wave, severe cold wave sometimes, and sometimes moderate cold waves. So after passage of this system, I mean, from 5th December onward, we can expect a cold wave penetrating into the most of the areas, especially in Balochistan. It will be very cold weather. I think temperature will drop up to at some places 0 and below 0. And similarly over north, over KP and North Punjab, including Islamabad and the other areas, So you can expect the significant drop of temperature from 5th or 6th December onwards.
Wow.
Right, and Dr. Saab, so now also let's talk about the smog, because smog has receded, and are we experiencing any natural rainfall in the days to come, especially in the areas in which there was a blanket cover of the smog?
I'm not expecting any rainfall, like, unfortunately, in those areas which were affected badly by smoke. But you know, when wind direction gets changed, it's the smoke actually has lessened because of the change in wind direction. So whenever the wind is from southeast towards the Lahore and the other surrounding areas, so that creates a lot of smoke in those areas because of the suspension of the all pollutants. And whenever wind changes, it blows from northwest toward the Lahore and adjoining areas, so it reduces the smoke. So nowadays we are in that phase that wind is blowing from the northwest mostly, and so that's why we are getting very less smog actually. Though it is fog in patches in the early morning and late night, but it is not as dense as it was to be in previous days.
But sir, do you think that in days to come, if the wind direction is going to change, we might experience the same air quality index?
Yes, because as I've told you that whenever the wind direction changes, so that those are actually the pollutants, the pollutants because of the transport emissions, because of the industrial emission, and because of the agriculture residue burning emission. So these pollutants are always there actually in our area. But whenever the wind direction changes, so when wind actually when wind picks up in direction wise and speed wise, so that mixes these pollutions, and these are drifted from one place to another place. So I think that it won't be get too severe as we were expecting in the earlier days of November, and it started from the last days of October and almost prevailed for 3 weeks of summer, November. So now it is getting less by less day by day.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much, Dr. Saab, for being with us. Lovely to be in conversation with you and the kind of conversation that we have had. Hajra, do you remember how in older days, we actually had to call our mothers or ask them for a razai? I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with this term, because these days we use the term quilt, probably,
Oh,
bombers.
you are acting very posh here, but we still call it razai, and razai moti wali razai or cotton wali
I had to
razai.
ask for it from my mom just yesterday, because it's getting colder now. And, for you to wake up.
If you remove that, cover of very poshness and urbanness, I mean, razai is always the thing out there. And I do see the razai is lot of here at PTV too, because alhamdulillah, our team is so much dedicated. The entire PTV works so much dedicated, and especially on the days where it requires the night shifts, so very vibrant night shifts. So there's plenties of.
But have you gotten it out, or was it already out?
No. I take the blanket and then.
Oh, the posh side now. Look at that.
No. The blanket is called kambal, right? It's not called quilt, as I would like to call it. But anyways, moving on to the death anniversary of the eminent writer, poet and leader of Pakistan movement, Maulana Zafar Ali Khan, is being observed today. He was born in Sialkot in 1873, and he rendered exemplary services in the Pakistan movement and rightly deserved to be called and acknowledged as the father of Urdu journalism. And obviously, one of his dedication, example of the dedication that we can find in the examples or in the literary history of Pakistan or the South Asia is that he never married, and whenever his mother was asking him to get married, he always said that I already married to the Urdu literature, and that was his level of dedication, and that is why we see that after the partition we are able to reclaim the Urdu as a language, as a national language.
Exactly, and such is the dedication that we certainly require in our lives as well. And while we are at it, I think, certainly we need to kind of pay rich tribute to all of the services for people who've contributed to our literature, culture and arts, and we'll come towards that as well. But over here, we really need to kind of discuss about how in these days, in today's time, with a lot of research and science technologies actually advancing, I think something that we have seen is that, that a lot of people now are not as scared of the term cancer as we were before. And it's because of the researchers who have been figuring it out whether how to treat cancer. So imagine that scientists have actually discovered bacteria that can help fight bowel cancer. Scientists in the UK have found a possible way to beat bowel cancer, which is the second leading cause of cancer-related deaths in the United Kingdom. According to a study led by University of Birmingham in collaboration with the University of Glasgow, scientists found that Salmonella, a bacteria, could be engineered to allow T cells to kill the cancer cells. T cells are a type of white blood cells that protect the body from infection and disease. Wow.
Right, and Shahzad, do you remember the time when, especially when we were young, so we used to loiter a lot, and our mothers used to always call us that, you know, you need to stop loitering because it is not a very fancy term, but loitering was used as a, I mean, we knew to explore the player out there, right, because it was very good, fencing around, you know, going around in the streets, but there is a group of people out there, and this team is being led by someone who has lived in the UK. He was living a very comfortable life, but then he moved back to Lahore, and he wanted to explore the streets of Lahore because Lahore has such a rich literary history, cultural history, heritage and architecture, and he always wanted to claim that loitering as the form of the empowerment, as the form of the reclaiming back our identity. So in order to explore all of these concepts about the self, cities and spaces, I'm very glad that we have been joined by Ghazi Taimoor, who happens to be the founder of Lahore Ka Ravi. Assalamu alaikum Ghazi, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So first of all, Ghazi, thank you so much for traveling all the way back to Pakistan and then residing in Lahore and then kind of making your way through the layers of the history that we have embedded within the art, culture and heritage of Lahore as well. So let's get started with that. How did you get started with this journey?
Thank you so much for that question. And I don't think I deserve any praise whatsoever, because the city that we're talking about is a city that deserves to be loved. It's a city that deserves to be story told. So I'm just only playing my part to give back to the city that itself has given me so much. So I grew up in Lahore specifically, and after my education, I moved to the UK. And when I was living in the UK, there was this realization that we understand cities from a very different lens based on the way cities are taught to us. So, for example, Lahore, I understood when I was living in London, for example, I saw how a city shapes identity, how our education systems shape identity, how our curriculums shape identity, how our interactions shape identity. So at that time, I really felt there was a void, and I wanted to kind of connect with that Pakistani way more, which I felt my education system was just giving me one lens of the city or of my identity. So long story short, there was an entire journey. But living in London, I realized that Pakistan is kind of my calling, and living in Pakistan is something I really wanted to do. So I moved back to Lahore. And among other things that I do, this isn't my full-time thing, it's my passion project along with a couple of friends of mine. We used to go and discover the city, different areas that I did not know about. Specifically vicinities that aren't talked about in our curriculum. So when I started doing that, there's a lot of people, when I was putting it on social media, we want to see this as well. And there's this thirst for connection with the city that goes beyond just specific towns. I live in this vicinity, I grew up in this vicinity, but I want to know the city better. And that's where the Lahore Ka Ravi initiative was formed. And that's now what we just try to do, play a small part in just getting to know and understand the city better.
And Ghazi, when we talk about, so for example, in colonial subcontinent, we used to see that there is a very vibrant street culture out there. And so in the colonial times, we also witnessed tensions between that street cultures and the gupshup that used to happen in the bazaar, because that was seen by the British as a threat to the public affair, or obviously their imposed public affair. Do you still find that street culture or the bazaari gupshup in the Lahore's old city? Because that is the area which is a periphery within a very coarse, right? A sort of an indigenousness within the modernity that is sweeping over the Lahore. How do you explain it?
Yeah, maybe it's such an interesting perspective to look at, especially as someone who doesn't live in the city or doesn't live in the inner city, for example, the walled city. So it's always so interesting to go in as an outsider, but trying to immerse ourselves in a way that we don't come from on top. That colonial legacy of us versus them, while equivalently, we're all residents of the same city, no matter whichever religion, no matter whichever background, no matter whichever ethnicity we come from. So having those conversations and developing an authentic relationship was something that I really wanted to do, just to connect with the city better. Because I felt the kind of stories, the kind of perspectives, the kind of knowledge that you get from people who live in the city who have learned skills or who have learned knowledge, who have learned history by word of mouth over the course of years is something that you will not find in your Pakistan studies book, or isn't something that you would find in your British Council, yeah, matric curriculums. These are things that locals know. So, वो storytelling, the art of storytelling, and that's something that Lahoris are great at. It's something if you start talking to someone, they will start with one story, go to another one, then connect with a third one, then a fourth one, and then make a full circle, and then come back to the one that you started off from. So that idea of connecting through stories, which isn't necessarily a history page, but rather something that's very local and real in nature, was something that I really admired, because when you talk about education systems that are shaped by a post-colonial era, usme the challenge that you get is that you will only get certain narratives, but not all of them. But if you really want to get all the narratives, the idea is to connect with people, talk to people, and listen to the most important thing, their stories. And that's where you have breadth of knowledge and
And
exposure
I think
within.
this is one of the unique selling points of us being in Lahore. Anytime, whenever you are in Lahore, I think whenever you're in conversation with a Lahori, you're going to have the best time ever as well. But unfortunately now, whenever you're going to ask a Lahori, okay, I need to go somewhere, they say that, they do not tell you the right way. But now I think it actually opens up a newer way of, for people to kind of experience. Now imagine that we belong to Rawalpindi over here. We have got Raja Bazaar, we have got Taxila around over here. We go to Multan, there's so many different places. How do you think that people like me, Hajra, when we go back to our own cities, that we can actually do the same for what you are doing for your city, Lahore?
Really, that's a great point. I do feel that that's a stereotype that we have about Lahoris, because they never tell you the right way. I feel that we do, but we just go with this stereotype. But I really think so. There's a course that I teach along with the history professor, Dr. Kasmi Saab, in Lums. It's called Walking in the City. And the idea is to get to know your city by walking in it, by engaging with the city. So, and that's something that Agra, when you started, you mentioned that back in the days, our parents' generation, unka ek hota tha ki they would go out and they would walk the city, they would loiter around, or flaneur, as the concept is called. You just go and you look at the city, connect with the buildings, and have a more authentic connection. Obviously, with the pace of time, with pollution, with different transport vehicles, etc., the idea of engaging with the city is much more confined, and you're confined to, or a lot of people are confined to the vicinities that they grow up in, and not engaging with the entire city itself. So, for example, one of the walks that we do is the Shrines of Lahore walk, or a tour, where we go to various shrines of the city, not from a religious lens, but talking about the shrines that shape the identity of Lahore. This Mustalif shrines pe jaake we talk about the stories of those shrines. Another one that we do is Havelis of Lahore, and talking about the people who used to live in these Havelis. Another one that we do is, for example, that we have coming up also, it's called Women of Lahore. So talking about the women who shaped the culture and the identity of Lahore as a city. So after going back to your same question, is that this is something that exists in every city. I might be slightly biased towards Lahore, but it's something that exists in Pindi, it's something that exists in Islamabad, it's something that exists in Gujranwala, it's something that exists in Faisalabad, in Sialkot, in Karachi, in Hyderabad, Larkana, Sakkar. आप किसी भी शहर में जाएंगे, wherever you go, you'll be able to find some beautiful stories that you will not find in books. And not to perhaps the generation I learned from and the older generation, but perhaps a request to parents and people who have young children is to not confine your children to certain ideologies, but rather expose them to the variety and the diversity that exists within our
Not in the books, because they might probably shouldn't be in the books as well. I think
No.
a few of the stories.
No, not just that, Ghazi. So we've seen when we talk about the colonial modernity, so most of the literature that is coming from the West speaks of the oppression which is being going on. And since you are the founder of the Lahore Karavi, how do you find the relationship of the liar, of the loitering, wandering, and the sojourn that is carried out, and that too, how do the women of those particular Havelis used to have that relationship? Was it very empowering? Was it disempowering? How did they have created or established their own culture, which was passed down from generation to generation? And there's a lot of local wisdom hidden in those cultures. So how do you see that?
Or how was it in Shalimar Bagh, for that matter?
Yeah, maybe that's such a good question. Is that there's a concept that's called cultural violence. So cultural violence the specific idea perpetuates that there's certain cultures that put themselves up and certain cultures that are put down. No one knows why the one that is up, and no one knows why the one that is down is down. But there's an idea that this is superior, this is inferior, this is better, this is worse, this is good, this is not as good. And I feel that there's a lot of that stigma that's attached around various cultures, various non-white cultures around the world. Looking at things from a colonized or post-colonial lens basically just means that what you're going to treat in the West will be better, and anything that was colonized or anything that doesn't meet the white standard is not as great. So, usme the idea of reclaiming the sense of pride in your identity on being who we are is something that education systems wouldn't do because they're shaped by white systems. So that's something that we need to decolonize our own perspectives. This may, when you listen to the richness of the country that we're in, when you listen to I'll give you a small example. At a point when the Mughal Empire was at its peak in the subcontinent, and uske alawa bhi mukhtalif, even Ranjit Singh ka empire was at its peak in Punjab and the vicinities around Punjab. Us time pe these places were places that the West used to look at. Tell us about Jahangir. Tell us about Ranjit Singh. Tell us about the local kings here. Tell us about the richness. That's exactly why the white person decided to come here in the first place, and then obviously colonized based on the Industrial Revolution and other factors. But the fact that this was so rich, and now if you look at it from a perspective where people like myself would be taught by the West or educated by the West, and then look at their own cultures from a very different lens, and sometimes not with that pride, is something that I wanted to reclaim for myself. And every single time that I found myself talking about my country, my identity, my heritage, कि जी यहाँ पे औरतों का role during the 1857 rebellion, औरतों का role during the court, Mughal court, उससे पहले भी औरतों का role, for example, in the like Noor Jahan का role in
Ghazi, when we talk about, so since you're speaking about the identity empowerment, how has these identity walks changed you as a person? You know, how were you before that, and how have they added layers and dimensions of knowledge to your personality and brought a change? And I would say, please explain to us what exactly is the Lahoriness, because people often say, "Jina Lahore ni takiya jamya ni." What does that mean?
And do you think people are out there, you know, to listen to these stories? Do you think that they find it very interesting and that the groups are actually becoming bigger and bigger?
Every week we have a lot of people apply for the walk, and we have to request कि हम इतने ज़्यादा नहीं लोगों को लेके जा सकते. We have to limit it because there's a thirst for these stories to be told. And what is it that I feel that people are connecting with in our walks? My dost Hajra and Fawad, we three run the show. Usme we were talking about this. What is it that is the USP of Lahore that people are coming in from? And I would say, Hajra, that's something, the one answer that we have is that it's the Lahori warmth, or it's the Pakistani warmth. We keep on talking about the West, we keep on looking at the West, London, Boston.
But thank you, Ghazi. Thank you so much for your time. And unfortunately, we were short of time, but we would have heard more of, Lahore Ka Ravi and Shalimar Bagh, and, even if we come down to, Rawalpindi, I think let's talk about Golden Samosa and Gordon College and, all of those things. I think it's beautiful, beautiful memories as well, and everybody needs to kind of make sure that they kind of contribute towards the literature that is available, number one. Number two, the alternate stories needs to be promoted so that everybody gets to know what the Shahr was all about.
And I think documenting these stories are essential to preserving our culture, our heritage, and like Ghazi mentioned, they are not being taught in social studies books or in other literature. So we need to reclaim our identity.
True.
So moving on to our very interesting news, a centuries-old standalone coral has been discovered off the coast of the Solomon Islands in the Pacific Ocean, and it is so immense that it can be seen from the space.
Wow.
The coral is roughly 34 meters wide, 32 meters long, and 6 meters tall. It is even longer than the average blue whale, and that can be the largest animal on the earth. It also dwarfs the world's next largest known coral, which is 22 meters wide, found in the American Samoa, known as the Big Mormon. And obviously, because of the human activity, we are witnessing that how coral reefs are being damaged, and I hope and wish and pray that this coral reef remains protected and not damaged. So now moving on to the another segment which talks about the chess and how chess can be a form of the activity which can push the kids away from because they're glued towards the social media, and have a more intellectually stimulating activity, and how it can enhance their motor skills. So in order to enhance the analytical skills and the resilience through the chess, we're very glad that we have been joined by the Secretary FIDE EDU. She is the Rita Atkins. Assalamu alaikum, Rita, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Thank you for having me.
Right, Rita. So how are you embarking on this sojourn of empowering the kids through and bringing or sharpening their analytical skills through the chess?
Yes,
I am 100% on it. This is our mission at the International Chess Federation Education Commission. It's a very ambitious goal, but we would like to bring chess to every classroom in the world in the next few years, because there are so many benefits of teaching with chess as an educational tool. And everything you said about building resilience and building analytical skills through playing chess is true, and it needs to be used. We've got this wonderful tool, and I think it would be a crime not to use it. And I think every child needs to be introduced.
Yeah, when we talk about the chess and whenever you speak of the game, so games and studies are seen as the corollaries of each other, a dichotomy, and a lot of parents, they don't want their kids to engage too much into the games. So when you are speaking about enhancing the analytical skills, how do you think that because you need to also teach the parents that it's a good game and it's a good investment into their children. How do you do that?
Well, there's one way. If chess is treated as a sport, then of course the parents are in charge of taking the children to the chess club and then making them go to tournaments and so on. I think there it depends on the child. It depends on the parent.
I guess there's a bit of distortion, and we will certainly make sure that we connect back with Rita as well. If she's back, we certainly have a few more questions to ask. Rita, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, yeah.
So Rita, there's one more question that I would love to ask, and that is that now imagine that mind sports is certainly something that a lot of students, a lot of schools are actually making sure that they promote it. Now there was this research which was being conducted which said that if parents, will allow their children to be with their cell phones or tablets and whatnot, their strategic decision making will certainly be probably contained. Do you think that when students actually play a lot of chess, spend time with their own selves, strategizing whether which move can actually help them win, will certainly will have a positive impact on their strategic decision making in the life to come?
Definitely, but I would prefer them not to play with their own mobile phones against the computer, but to play each other, so that they are also developing social skills. That is the reason why I prefer chess to be introduced in schools, in classrooms, because that's when you get all the benefits of chess as an educational tool. All the academic benefits. It's got very similar problem-solving skills to mathematics and other STEM subjects, like this analytical thinking, this algorithmic thinking of yes and if this and then that. That can be used. Every child can benefit from chess. If you leave it to the parents and you leave it just to the home environment, then you miss out on 90% of the children at least. So I'm more ambitious than that.
Yeah. And in addition to this, Rita, when we speak of it, obviously we're talking about mind sports. Do you think that chess really needs to be introduced as a curriculum as well, or as a subject, so that there's more literature on it for students to read, so that they can learn better, so that they kind of enjoy it, reading together as well? I mean, reading about chess, I think, will be fun.
That's exactly what I mean. I really insist that wherever I go, I'm meeting ministers and other key people, that they introduce chess as a subject in school. Not every single year group, that would be too much, but at the age of 8, 9 or 10, to have a year of chess, maybe 1 hour a week in the curriculum, would be extremely beneficial. And if I can tell you from Pakistan, my experience is we have launched the Prime Minister's initiative in February of introducing chess into 10,000 schools, which was a very, very ambitious project. And now it's starting. We had very positive reaction from the federal government of Pakistan in Islamabad. And we have some concrete schools signed up here in Punjab. The Assistant Commissioner of Lahore, Ms. Fatima, has promised us 50 district schools where we can start our program. The Honourable Minister of Sports and Labour, Mr. Coker, has promised us 70 labour schools. And the Honourable Minister of Education, Mr. Rana, has promised us 150 schools from the region to implement the programming. So that's what we will be doing, being very busy at the first half of 2025.
Rita, so far, how has been the response? How receptive were the people about this initiative, the kids and the children and everyone, the stakeholders?
Very positive. We were mostly addressing the key stakeholders, the teachers and the government officials, and they all wanted it. We also have done our first preparation of teachers course, which is an internationally renowned course developed by FIDE. Last weekend, and we trained 30 teachers. So you have 30 new school instructors who are ready to get going in Punjab with this initiative.
Rita, how good are you at chess?
I am a woman international master. My top rating was 2,285, and I was a Hungarian women's champion in 1993. So that was my peak. I'm still playing some tournaments, but I'm also a mathematics teacher, so now I'm
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rita, for being with us.
So
Lovely to be in conversation with you. And for everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, I believe myself, because I do play chess with my daughter, who's 11 years old, and that's the best time that we have together as well. Because with chess, what happens is that, with every move, you need to know whether how can it hurt you or how will it benefit you. So I think that's something that you really need to calculate in life, right?
Yeah, the queen out there, and so that's why we hear the chess terminologies and the politics all the time. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, for watching our program. Until next time, it's a goodbye, Allah Hafiz, and good morning.